Number 10. All fall down. Although Timothy Hall was being arraigned for assault, no one expected the young man to lash out suddenly as he was about to leave the courtroom. Hall whacked a bailiff in the face with his cuffed hands, sending the officer staggering and unleashing chaos. 2 more bailiffs jumped in to subdue the prisoner, including 70-year-old military veteran Don Webb, who struggled to put Hall in a headlock as other prisoners yelled from the sidelines. They got Hall up against a table, which slid, bringing everyone down. At last, Hall was removed from the court, with several new counts of assault added to his charges. And while 3 bailiffs had to go to the hospital for evaluation and treatment, none suffered any lasting harm. Number 9. Impact Statement Impact. The atmosphere was tense at the sentencing of Tristan Lamoureux, convicted of murdering his wife.
Now in court, Lamoureux sits surrounded by 4 sheriff's deputies who closely watch over him.
Many people close to the victim were present, including her brother, Jason Wilson, who came forward to make an impact statement describing how the crime had affected him and his family. Wilson began calmly, but as he turned to address the defendant, anger overcame him, perhaps because Lamoureux seemed indifferent, rocking idly in his chair.
Since the words don't appear to have any effect on Lamoureux, Wilson tries a different approach.
Although the wary deputies moved to intercept an attack, Wilson unexpectedly darted past them, got around the table, and headed straight for Lamoureux. An officer grabbed Wilson before he reached his target, but perhaps he was slightly mollified when 2 bailiffs tackled Lamoureux roughly to the ground, presumably trying to protect him.
According to local authorities, Jason Wilson was not charged for the incident.
Number 8. How not to get released. Daniel Nicholson, an Australian who had been arrested on weapons charges, was dearly hoping to be released on bail.
Take a seat. Take a seat.
Miss, please, miss.
Please, miss. I'll tell you what please, miss is.
When he found out from the judge that it wasn't going to happen, Nicholson was quite upset. So upset that he climbed out of the dock where prisoners are kept, jumped onto a table in the courtroom, and fought wildly with several security officers until he was pinned to the ground. We should probably mention that he was reported to be high at the time. Although Nicholson later regretted his behavior and blamed the drugs, that didn't help the guard who had broken his foot in the melee. In the end, all Nicholson did was further convince the judge that he should be imprisoned.
Nicholson was sentenced to 21 months in prison with parole eligibility after 1 year.
Number 7. Love and Thunder. When the families of a murder suspect and a murder victim get together, it's bound to be a volatile environment. Towards the end of the arraignment of Pedro Merchant, who was accused of shooting another young man from the area, the judge announced that Merchant would be held without bail. One of the spectators called out, "I love you, Pedro." It didn't take long before violence then broke out. Family members from both sides began fighting with each other, creating chaos in the court. Some were taken out, but the fracas only continued, first in the halls, then outside.
Family of the defendant started to attack the family, the other family. Next thing you know, it was just all hell that broke loose. They started dragging people out, people started getting tackled, just total mayhem.
By the time things finally settled down, 6 spectators had been arrested and 11 security officers injured.
I think that kind of behavior is unbecoming in a courtroom. It's just ridiculous that this whole family is screaming, "Pull up Pedro." He did something that was heinous. He killed someone.
Number 6. A narrow escape. As prosecuting attorney Jonathan Roth waited for the jury to return from their deliberation, he may have been worried about the case, but probably wasn't concerned for his personal safety. That abruptly changed when the defendant, Joshua Harding, rushed at him from across the room, wielding a makeshift knife.
In under 8 seconds, so much has happened.
Luckily, a quick-witted police detective who had worked on Harding's case was present. He swiftly blocked Harding's knife arm as Roth ducked out of the way, then brought the defendant down with the help of another officer.
If not for the quick reflexes of Detective Kanan, Roth could have sustained serious injuries.
Harding openly admitted afterwards that he was trying to kill Roth, although he did not explain why, unless it was to get an attempted murder charge added to his other offenses.
Today, a judge sentenced Joshua Harding to between 20 and 60 years in prison for attempted murder.
Number 5. A leap of vengeance. At the sentencing of notorious criminal Michael Madison, The father of his last victim came forward to speak.
Mr. Terry's now just a few feet away from the man who so brutally took the life of his daughter, Sherelda.
Van Terry, who had lost his teenage daughter Sherelda, was composed when he first began his statement. But when he turned away from the judge and looked at Madison, who had expressed no remorse throughout the long trial, he reportedly saw that Madison was smiling, and that was it. Without warning, Terry launched his body through the air and over the table, determined to punish Madison. But security officers were able to stop Terry before he harmed the defendant. Madison didn't seem to care. He was still smiling, though he had just been sentenced to death.
It was like he was not even remorseful for what he had done.
Number 4, brothers in arms. Anthony Dees was in court when Dale Williams, the man who ended his mother's life, was sentenced. As Dees escorted his aunt forward in the courtroom, it brought him closer to Williams, and he saw his chance. In a flash, he jumped the table where Williams was sitting and went after him. Despite the efforts of multiple officers, Dees grabbed Williams by the ankle chain and dragged him out of his chair. Then Anthony's brother Jerome joined the fray, dodging several deputies.
One of them was next to Williams near the podium when they grabbed him. The other brother then jumped over the railing and started attacking Williams.
The two sons struggled mightily on the floor with the defendant and officers, as their aunt yelled and beat her fist on the lectern, and general chaos reigned. Finally, they were subdued and charged with contempt of court.
Anthony Dees and Jerome Stewart will be in Youngstown Municipal Court.
Number 3, pouncing on counsel. 4 defendants, a murder conviction, tasers, Florida. Need we say more?
Jury has found Travis Davis, Brandon Banks, Kelvin Grimmage, and Keela Richardson guilty of killing Courtney London during a robbery home invasion 2 years earlier.
To be fair, the courthouse did arrange for extra security, but sadly it wasn't terribly effective. When the jury announced a sentence of life imprisonment, Travis Davis started things off by attacking his own lawyer, Daniel Hernandez.
Another court officer quickly jumps in to assist.
Hang on, Mr. Davis.
Meanwhile, a third court officer attempts to handcuff Grimmage, but that doesn't go any better, and total chaos ensues.
Another defendant, Kelvin Grimmage, joined in. As bailiffs struggled to stop the fight, the poor attorney writhed on the ground, trying to avoid punches. Finally, the security officers used tasers, stunning the 2 assailants and rescuing the lawyer.
Reportedly, all 3 men were tased, including Brandon Banks, who doesn't appear to join the free-for-all.
Davis and Grimmage were forced down and handcuffed. Davis later apologized to Hernandez, who reportedly replied, with composure we find hard to imagine, "That's okay." Number 2, a dad's anguish. The trial for Larry Nassar, the notorious former team doctor of the United States women's national gymnastics team, drew a lot of attention for its absolutely horrific scope. And the revelations of the proceedings eventually enraged beyond control one father of 3 gymnasts, Randall Margraves. After his daughter's testimony, Margraves asked the judge if he could spend some time alone with Nassar, or as he called him, quote, "this demon."
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon. Would you do that?
The judge predictably said no. That's when Margraves lunged towards Nassar, shouting threats mingled with curses.
Well, I'm gonna have to...
Security officers intervened and managed to stop him before he could reach Nassar. Otherwise, who knows what might have followed.
Any parent would want to do physical harm, so I understand that. But you have to understand that this is a courtroom.
Number 1, here comes the judge. Sidney Newsom was a defendant being let out of a Mississippi courtroom when he decided to throw things at the judge.
As papers fly everywhere, 2 court clerks rush away from the commotion.
Pro tip? Don't ever do this. Since he was cuffed in front, Newsom managed to awkwardly grab loose items and toss them in the judge's direction. The object of his attack, Justice Aubrey Rimes, did not seem particularly concerned at first. However, after Newsom managed to hurl more serious items, Rimes clearly had enough.
As Newsom throws more paper at him, Judge Rimes single-handedly pins him onto the desk.
The older judge stepped down from the bench, helped pin the defendant to a table, and held him there until more help arrived. Footage of the incident quickly went viral, and we can certainly see why.
Judge Rimes returns to the bench, leans back in his chair while one court clerk puts the computer monitor back in place and another straightens up the scattered paper.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.